Let's turn to Sean McDermott, though, because this is where, like I said, I got in my typical beef with some fans. I don't have the tweet to display.
Because you don't think he deserves to be in that top 10, right?
Well, here's what I said. This was I quote tweeted that PFF list, and this was word for word what I originally said, and then I want to slightly amend this. I'm glad you asked that question. Here's what I said. I said, interesting list. One I don't agree with, especially once it gets past 3. I am, however, in agreement with McDermott not currently being on it. There's a lot to prove still there, especially after the Kansas City debacle that ruined a Super Bowl trip. That's what I said originally. So I did say him not being on it was something I agreed with. Now I'm slightly retracting that, ever so slightly. I do think he does deserve to be on the top 10 list because you do look at success. The Bills have been good now for 3 straight years. They've been real, they made the playoffs 4 of his 5 years as head coach. They went to the AFC Championship game 2 years ago. Last year, they went to the playoffs. They won a game in the playoffs. So he deserves to be on the top 10 list. He also deserves credit for building a culture. I mean, this was a team that perennially was losing literally a 17-year playoff drought before he got here. And then in his first year, now a lot of luck was involved, but in his very first year as head coach, the 17-year drought ends. How do you not give a guy credit for that? You know what I mean? That's kind of, you're a hater if you don't do it. Right. So he's built a winning culture, or he's had a big part of building a winning culture. The players like him, they play hard. So he deserves credit. So for me to say he shouldn't have been in the top 10 is wrong. That said, a lot of Bills fans would say, and a lot of Bills fans did say, Joe, that he belongs easily in the top 5. And I'm like, no, he don't.
No,
he doesn't. He doesn't. No. And it's simple. You look, a lot of Bills fans, and I understand why. And I don't know, maybe if it was the Lions or whatever, it's such a horrific nightmare the way that game ended. You don't want to talk about it. I hear people, we're still talking about this game. We're still talking about 13 seconds. Yes, we are.
People are like, you haven't moved on from this horrifically terrible instance. Come on.
Listen, in terms of who to blame for it, we'll never move on from it unless they win a Super Bowl. Because the bottom line is this, Joe, were it not, forget about Tyler Bass or the special teams coach or Levi Wallace at corner or how far back the defenders were playing. Were it not for Sean McDermott and the decisions that he made over those last 3 plays, including the kickoff, I'm counting, over those 13 seconds, the Bills are at home playing the Cincinnati Bengals for the right to go to the Super Bowl and almost certainly are going to the Super Bowl. How do you not blame the coach for that? And also, you go back a year before when the Bills went to the AFC Championship game, Sean McDermott's worst job of the season by far was that AFC Championship game. He coached scared. Everybody knows that. In the biggest moments, we've seen the worst of Sean McDermott as a game day NFL head coach. And one other stat I'll throw out at you. And this could be a little bit skewed, so I admit that. So kind of take it for what it's worth. But the Bills ran roughshod over a lot of teams last year. But 6 times a score was a 1-score game. The final score was a 1-score game. 6 times. And the Bills won 0 of those games. They were 0-6 in 1-score games last year, including the playoff loss in overtime to Kansas City. 0-6 in 1-score games. So you combine that. You combine 13 seconds. You combine last year AFC Championship game. That's why Sean McDermott's not a top 5 coach to me. Maybe he can be. Like Andy Reid had a lot to prove for a long time that he could win the big one when he got to Kansas City, and ultimately he did. That's where I'm at with Sean McDermott right now. Sure, bottom of the top 10, but top 5, no, because he's got too much to prove.
Yeah.
I
agree. I agree with that completely. I mean, everything that happened in that Kansas City game, a great game, one of the, best game of the playoffs, best game in the best football game in the last 20 years, probably.
Sure, absolutely.
And, the way it turns out, the way it ends up in overtime is because, you didn't make it clear enough to what to do on the kickoff after you took the lead.
Call timeout twice too, Joe.
Right.
Both plays, both offensive plays Kansas City ran. The Bills called timeout before. So if Sean McDermott saw something he didn't like, Don't blame Leslie Frazier. Don't blame Jordan Poyer, Edmonds, Hyde, Levi Wallace, any of the guys. Sean McDermott, he called timeout 2 different times. And I know people are probably getting really mad listening or watching this right now because we're rehashing shit from months ago. I get it. But this is it's directly connected to the head coaching rankings, as far as I'm concerned. This is bad coaching when it mattered most, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry to me.
Yeah, it's poor. It's
I get mad still, man.
You should. I mean, like Bills fans should be mad about that. Just trying to I get trying to move on from it because you don't want to hang around on bad losses.
Fair.
Nobody wants to let that hang around their neck forever. Like nobody wants to just kind of wallow in misery. Although Bills fans kind of did that for 17 years, but it's that's a different thing. But this is really tough losses like that, man. Like you're a fan, it's really hard. You want to move on from it, but also you can't get away from it. And if you want to get away from it, good luck, because what do you think's going to get talked about when Kansas City plays Buffalo in the regular season? What do you think's going to be the discussion point the entire week during the entire game? That's going to be people are going to talk about how great the game was, how great Allen was, how great Mahomes was, but they're also going to be yeah, well,
13 seconds.
They booted out of the back of the end zone and they called timeout twice when Kansas City didn't have any timeouts. One timeout, they had zero time.
No timeouts.
You helped them. You helped them get down the field, because you're worried about giving up the big play.
I'm sorry. Let me, before people are going nuts. Kansas City did have timeouts. Still shouldn't matter though.
Right.
Still shouldn't matter. You gave them free 20 yards twice in a row. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the whole prevent only prevents you from winning the game. It was that kind of thing. But I don't know. Do you have that Arizona game in the back of your mind? Oh man, we can't get victimized like that again. Or is it just because you just watched Tyreek Hill run past your entire defense 5 plays before that? The last series where you're just terrified of the same thing happening. Fair worry, completely fair worry, because your secondary can't keep up with a guy that fast. But I don't know, man.
It's a polarizing topic.
It's trying to do the right thing, and it ends up being the wrong thing.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. I don't know. I can't pat a guy in the back for trying to do the right thing. It's execution, but it's a failed execution by not squibbing the kick. It's where it starts, because that starts the clock of running immediately. Then then they don't have 1 second left to get a kick away. They don't have any of that time.
It's a polarized when it comes to Sean McDermott and how you feel about him as a coach and where you think he belongs amongst the coaches in the league right now, where you think his place is, to me, is one of the more polarizing topics out there, because again, you are weighing the fact that he is largely responsible and deserves a lot of credit for being the head coach that turned this franchise around. He was the right choice when they needed him. That's undisputable right now. The team he's built, the culture, the character of this football team, Sean McDermott's fingerprints are all over it. So you weigh that, and then you weigh the fact that the head coach is the biggest reason why, at least last year for sure, this team didn't go to the Super Bowl. Because again, are you going to say, well, if he wasn't head coach, they wouldn't have been in that position? I don't believe that. This was an amazingly talented football team. But when he's the primary reason why, those 13 seconds, again, get over it. No. Because it's a fact now.
Yeah.
Even if you take the emotion out and you just look at it objectively, the biggest problem at the end of what was one of the best football games we've ever seen was the head coach fucked up 3 times in 13 seconds. It's as simple as that. So how do you don't not get penalized for that?
Yeah.